Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, in the D.C. newsroom for National Public Radio, which is the central hub for NPR's coverage of politics and news, it just came out that they have amongst their staff 87 registered Democrats in their editorial positions and 0 Republicans. 87 to 0. Now, Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak was amazing at 56 games in a row. Pete Rose in the 70s at 44 games in a row. 87 to 0. Now, I suppose, should it matter what the political makeup of people are in these positions? You know, not really, I guess, in a real sense. We're not talking reality in Washington, D.C., are we? We're not talking about a non-biased media that covers this place, that covers what politicians do, and the slant that people are going to hear it when they're out there in their cars, their homes, or wherever, picking this up in the various forms of media. So what do we know about NPR? It receives funding from the taxpayer and tries at the same time to be claiming to be objective. It receives it via the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which the CPB, receives about $525 million of taxpayer dollars. About 50% of their funding. The other half comes from corporate donations, the same corporations that Democrats love to say evil things about, but oftentimes these days are doing bad things. So it's pretty hard to figure out where they're coming from. But what we've seen in recent years in reporting is a strong bias against Republicans and conservatives coming out of NPR, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, when they cover the political front here. The bias against anything that's not a far-left view is clear. In fact, the bias of NPR is so clear that even a left-leaning editor in their organization, is where this came out, is raising alarm about the clear and consistent bias. This person is very concerned about it and is now being dismissed. NPR has already issued many statements and articles dismissing the critique, including this morning, without any admission by NPR or acknowledgement of any wrongdoing or bias, and certainly they have no intent to reform or even reflect upon what this looks like and sounds like. Let us remember that NPR embraced the Russiagate conspiracy theory without question, and they dismissed the Hunter Biden laptop story without proper scrutiny. All these things have been proven otherwise, haven't they? They also have NPR actively working to dismiss and attack information about the true origins of the COVID-19 virus, as well as the early treatments could have probably saved and helped many lives when they dismissed ivermectin and other forms, instead calling it horse paste, when as recently as 2015 it won a Nobel Prize for the amazing work they did with ivermectin. In the last decade, NPR's own audience has shrunk and become more intensely left-wing, gradually pushing out conservative listeners with nonstop ideological programming, bias in reporting, and injecting far-left ideas into previously non-political programs. So it's not just that quirky little radio station you hear in a musty bookstore or at a used record store or something like that. It's taken a really hard twist to the left. They claim to be neutral in a public platform to consider all things and consider all perspectives, but unfortunately it isn't that way anymore. They're desperately burning up their own credibility to try and keep up with the demands of the far left in its ranks that continue to shift farther and farther left. That's what this person on their organization came out and said. For 25 years, they have lost the American people with this shift. Pretty sad. So perhaps instead of calling it National Public Radio, it should be called National Progressive Radio, the term Democrats on the far left use for themselves. Though I've never really seen where the word progress fits in with some of the programs and ideals coming from the so-called progressives. NPR being funded by taxpayer dollars is a serious betrayal of the public trust. The American taxpayer should no longer be subsidizing this propaganda, which fails to even pretend to be unbiased anymore, and is appealing to a smaller and smaller group of people, unfortunately. Too bad, because the idealism of it years ago it was created, looked a heck of a lot different, and was indeed something everybody could find enjoyment in. I yield back.